Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. I'm Gabino Iglesias, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the 2025 Brooklyn Book Festival's virtual festival day. Conversation with incredibly amazing Awad, Cassandra Khaw, and Kate Vanderborg. I'm going to read you their amazing bios, and then we're going to get this thing going. I was told there is a place for you all to ask questions. So throughout the event, please do that. Let's go. Mono Wad is the best-selling author of the novels Roush, sorry, Allswell's Bunny, and 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl. She's a three-time finalist for Goodreads Choice Award, the recipient of an Amazon Best First Novel Award, and she was shortlisted for the Giller Prize. Bunny was a finalist for the New England Book Award and was named Best Book of 2019 by Time, Vogue, and the New York Public Library. Her newest book, We Love You, Bunny, is the follow-up to Bunny. Margaret Atwood named Awad her literary heir in the New York Times Teen Magazine. She teaches fiction in the creative writing program at Syracuse University and is based in Boston. Cassandra Khaw is the USA Today best-selling and Bram Stoker Award-winning author of The Library at Hellebore, Nothing But Blackened Teeth, The Salt Grows Heavy, Breakable Things, and co-author of The Dead Take the A-Train with Richard Kadrey. They are an award-winning game writer. And last but definitely not least, by day, Kate Vanderborg is a freelance copywriter, and by night, she's usually composing or playing music. She grew up in Lancashire and went on to study music at Cambridge. So there's a reasonable amount of her in her narrator, including the fact that she was a pianist and reluctant bassoonist. She has, however, never had reason to suspect that her best friend has occult powers. Hirsch Altin today. Her short fiction has been published in the Fiction Desk, and she's a graduate of Faber 6 months writing a novel course, and He Shall Appear is her debut novel. She is based in London. They're all here. I had an absolute blast. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to throw out some general questions because like talking to each other, and I'm a huge fan of dark academia, and then we'll get a little bit more into the nitty picky stuff on each one of these amazing novels. I guess, Cass, let's start with you. There's a very huge difference between the this thing in the back that we all obsessed about writing for hours and hours and hours, and then that elevator pitch that we give people when we're doing events and talking about our work. So this might say, these are the elements that we want you to look, but you as the author have a different idea. So Cassandra, could you tell us a little bit about your novel, and then sort of tell us why you went here, and then we can go and talk about all the awesome things that happen.
I've kind of been pitching it as Battle Royale meets the Magicians with enough gore to make the boys and the boys blush.
All right.
It is about a group of kids who have been labeled as the Antichrist, as the destroyer of worlds, as the worst possible things that have ever been born. And they're all brought into this school where they're allegedly going to be redeemed, but things go incredibly badly. Very, very, very,
That's
very,
a way to
very
put it.
badly.
Yeah.
It kind of came about because I have very complicated feelings about academia. When I was going to college, my mom made it very clear that I didn't get to be a forensic specialist because no child of hers was going to play with corpses. So I ended up writing about them instead. And B, the college that I ended up going to was kind of specialized in the sense that we weren't allowed extracurricular activities. We weren't allowed freedom of expression in any which way, size, or form. The whole 3 years we were there, the only thing they wanted to do was make us marketable to companies. We were being like gang pressed into being corporate drones against our will. And I think I held a lot of resentment towards that kind of grew and grew over the decades. And it kind of sort of like coalesced in the last year or so, where it really hit me that the youth are really often commoditized, made into marketing ingredients, but also at the same time told that they are insufficient, that they need to be a certain way to be loved. And so often these ideas are so the young will chuck their bodies into the machine of capitalism and allow their souls to be chewed up and spit out. Like, how many of us have done internships for like $7 an hour, and all because
You
somebody
got
was like,
paid?
right? All because we were told that like after a while, those 80 hours a week, it's going to amount to something, and it never does. And all of that just kind of got squished together into a ball of goop.
All right. Thank you. Um, Mona, in your case, you're not coming here. You're returning. It's like going home. One of the things that I loved the most about Bunny didn't necessarily have to do with the book itself, although I loved the novel. It's every time you talk about it, it's always, oh my God, but it's either, oh my God, one of the best novels I've read in my life, or, oh my God, so weird and dark. So it seems like you heard that and you said, "Here's more, a lot more." So yes, please tell us about Bunny Redux.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for the kind words. I think, yeah, Bunny, just so for people who haven't read it, it takes place at a New England college campus. It's about a clique of MFA students, these really privileged young girls who they call each other Bunny, and they conjure cute men out of rabbits in these like ritualistic, violent off-campus workshops. And the story is told from the perspective of Sam, who is an outsider student and she hates the bunnies, but she ends up getting sucked into their cult in spite of herself. And then we just go down the rabbit hole from there. Um, and and We Love You, Bunny picks up where Bunny left off. It's Sam has written a book called Bunny about her experiences in this MFA. And the bunnies have found out and they are fucking pissed. And they show up at one of her book events and they kidnap her. And then they proceed to tell her how she got it all wrong. They are amazing creators and they have proof. And they're going to tell her the story of how they got together and how they made their first man. So it's very much modeled after Frankenstein. When I wrote Bunny, it was a real jump for me because it was my first book that went into the surreal, and I missed it so much when I was finished, so much, and it kind of never left me. But Bunny didn't really take off with readers at first. It kind of happened a few years later. In my heart, I wanted to return there, but I think it was seeing readers starting to be engaged and expanding the universe of it in all these different ways with their own art making that sort of gave me permission to go back, and I'm so glad I did. Yeah.
I don't think you need permission, but I give you permission for three now if you need it.
Awesome.
By the way, I guess I forgot when I started talking because I was running around the house just picking up books. As soon as you hear these amazing authors speak and then you go, I need this book right now, there's a link in the chat where you can go buy all their books. Also, if you still have your mom with you, you should buy a copy of each of these for your mom as well. So make sure you do that. Kate, funny story with your novel. I hadn't read it, but I'm a book reviewer, so I read a lot of book reviews, especially in big venues. And then when the Peter stuff starts showing up, I'm like, I kind of remember this. Did you write an essay? And I went looking, and it was the Guardian review that I sort of remembered for some reason from last year.
Oh, I see.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yes, amazing. Let's talk about Rivalry and Dark Academia Induct, but soon. Now tell us about And He Shall Appear, please.
Of course. So it's a story about an unnamed narrator, a young guy who comes from a small town in the north of England, very working class upbringing. And he goes to study music at the University of Cambridge. And so for him, this is a big culture shock. He feels like a fish out of water. He feels quite lost. And so he's initially very pleased when he kind of falls in with a guy called Bryn Cavendish, who is kind of big name on campus, private school, very charismatic. Everyone knows him. And he's also a very talented amateur magician, and he does the kind of pick a card type tricks for his friends at parties and things like that. And so the narrator is really delighted to be in Bryn's orbit until he starts to suspect that Bryn's charm might actually be a bit dangerous, and it might actually have something of the supernatural, something of the occult about it. And so the story is really about him striving to be closer to this starry person, and then striving to get away from him. And it is very much kind of inspired by my own experience of studying music at Cambridge. I went from, as you said in the intro, Lancashire, a town in Lancashire, and I studied music at Cambridge, and I too felt quite lost and confused by this place, and you know, had very complex feelings about it. You know, it's both brilliant and terrifying, and so yeah, I was trying to put some of that into the book.
Awesome. Cassandra, let's go back to you. This is I think as readers and also our marketing departments are all obsessed with genre. So in this case, let's get together with three amazing authors and talk about dark academia. It turns out we're talking about literary fiction, fantasy, horror. We're talking about absolutely everything. So in your case, how do you define dark academia, and also why? Because I've read everything you've published and it's very different. So you could have gone anywhere, but you went, where are you? Here you are. You went here, and you literally said, let's just explode human beings, because academia. So, why go there? And how do you define it?
I think it's kind of been circulating in my head for a few years, partially because like I'm at a point in my career, both in my day job in terms of my writing, that I've gotten invitations to teach, invitations to lecture, and moving back into the environments and, you know, having the privilege of being able to engage with young mentees and folks who are breaking into the industry and stuff. It got me thinking a lot. And the other bit, I think, was moving to the West and America and discovering the concept of incredible student debt just to get an education. Oh my God, this was not what I was expecting. And I remained utterly horrified by it. And so everyone's just nodding very quietly, like, yes, we have all known about this horror for a very long time. Good for you to join us. And all of that, I think, evoked a lot of the resentment that I felt towards my own educational experience. And I wanted to bring all of that in. I wanted to create a place where people might feel claustrophobic, people might feel like they're stuck and obligated to stay there. Because at the end of the day, the promise is the world will be better and your life will be better if you finish all of this. Graduation means safety, graduation means happiness. And no matter what happens to you in between, you have to reach the end point.
Yeah.
And I also really just wanted to do a locker room murder, not a locker room mystery. No, I just wanted everyone stuck in one place and having to duke it out. I am at heart a gore hound, and I own it.
And we love you for it. Yeah. Also, I think graduation just means you have to start paying. That's about it. That's what it boils down to. Thank you, Cassandra. Mona, I'm not going to blow smoke up your skirt, but I think you're at a point in your career where you could have done whatever you wanted. You could have written whatever. You were surely going to sell it, and it was going to be amazing. And you decided, I'm going back. I'm going back to the dark and the very, very weird. I love that you use the term surreal. Tell us a little bit about, why dark academia? Why Bunny again? And also in your case, why take that story and say, hey, listen, there's always angles. I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you some other perspectives.
Yeah, it's funny, I mean, I was always pulled back. Like the bunnies truly did haunt me. And I always was so curious because I think a lot of the tension in Bunny is that the main character, Sam, she's an outsider. She hates these girls, but she's also kind of drawn to them in spite of herself. That the bunnies sort of appear as a monolith, you know, this creepy, privileged monolith. And she comes from a different class. She's kind of an outsider in this institution. You know, it feels like a place where she truly doesn't belong. And I think that's the experience of so many students. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to write about it, because that was kind of my experience of school, truly, throughout my whole life. But I wanted to trouble it by entering the bunnies' heads, because the bunnies also don't feel confident at all. Like once you enter into their minds, you realize everybody feels like an outsider all the time. Nobody feels like they really belong. And I guess that was part of the draw. And also I wanted to read my other character, you know, and I love doing that. I love flipping the script and sort of seeing the world in a completely different way. And what, you know, revelations will come out of that, and how will that shift the story? Writers are always trying to claim a narrative and a perspective. And so, it felt important to have those competing perspectives on this place and this time. Yeah.
And if these were longer, I would totally ask questions about, you know, the craft and how you juggle all of those. But
Oh, yeah.
Kate, I always tell my students, don't write to whatever is hot right now, because by the time you finish the book and edit the book and send it to your agent and sell the book, that thing is like 3 years in the past. So this tells me that you've been into dark academia for a while, felt it, done your research, know it, understand it, can write about it. And here's your debut, which came out last year. Why go with dark academia for your debut?
Oh God, you know what? I feel like such a fraud because I don't think of myself as a dark academia writer at all, and it's not something that I would have said that I even read an awful lot of. It's just that when I started writing this book, just the term wasn't used. You know, I started writing it in 2017, and so the term wasn't used in the same way as it is now. Certainly not here where I am. It wasn't this sort of big definite book genre label. I feel like it was maybe a sort of more of an internet aesthetic at the time. And it's funny, when I went to look back at the pictures that I sent to agents when I was pitching this book, I didn't mention dark academia. I sort of didn't mention that phrase. And when people were talking to me about it, the references that would come up were things like Talented Mr. Ripley or Brideshead, things like that. So I feel like I'm actually coming to dark academia quite late, and in a slightly strange way. And I mean I came to that story just because I love that university setting. I mean, my heart is in ghost stories, really. That's where my heart is. And you know, there's a reference to M.R. James over there, and I feel like university as a kind of liminal time, you know, you're not a child anymore, but you're not an adult yet, and you haven't quite got out into the big wide world, but you have left home. This sort of really uncanny, unsettling liminal space that you exist in. I just feel that works really well for ghostly stories, and especially with I was also trying to go for the class aspect of someone who feels as if they've left a certain life behind, and they're sort of moving into this new way of life with people from a different class, but while they've left one, they'll never truly inhabit the other, and they end up sort of stuck in the between. And I actually noticed one thing that jumped out at me in House of Bone and Rain is when you talk about that feeling of leaving somewhere, and the I don't want to say the word because I'll mispronounce it, but the is it Destiero? The sort of
Yeah, no, you nailed it. Yeah.
the feeling of being not quite exiled, but I think you say it's sort it feels a bit like exile, but not quite, and being in this sort of strange in between.
Not home.
Yeah, and it's why I put lots of doors in the book, lots of thresholds. So yeah, the university. The reason I went to university as a setting was partly because of that. This sort of threshold where you feel like you're at this time of opportunity, but also a time when you fear that you might get it wrong and you won't make the most of this moment, and yeah, you could mess it up.
I think I do that every day of the week. Yes. I think this is the last one where I'm going to call you out by name. Sorry, I was a high school teacher for a while. It kind of sucked. Now we're done with the names. Cassandra, obviously, we have to talk about
Yes.
things that we love, which is the bodies and the gore and the extreme violence. And then I feel like you've also done the like Mona. It's like, oh, you're angry. Oh, you're gonna give me a 1-star review because there's a lot of blood and maybe a little bit of sex, and I use they them, and then that makes you angry because you can't handle pronouns. And then you said, I'm gonna do that on steroids longer than I've ever done it before. Because correct me if I'm wrong, this is the longest thing you've published.
Yes.
Solo, right? So you
Yes.
said, you don't like this? Haha, here's a ton of it. But then you said, I'm going to use all of my amazing language and I'm going to write
Aw.
beautifully about people being eviscerated. Tell us about your approach: gore, blood, violence, disgusting things, people exploding, all of that good stuff.
There are several parts to this. First of all, my parents were terrible people, like actually terrible people. And one of the things they did was, I think before the age of 8 or so, they insisted I had to watch every splatterpunk movie that ever existed at the time. So I was maybe like 7 when I watched John Carpenter's The Thing for the first time, and I recall being told I could not close my eyes. This leaves a mark, as you might imagine. But later on, I think due to a combination of factors, I've always been incredibly fascinated with the human body. Part of it is my own body dysmorphia and medical anxiety. And one of the things that helps with weird phobias is knowledge. And I was a voraciously curious kid. So I spent all my time reading up medical journals, things about the human anatomy, and so on and so forth, and developed a worrying vocabulary for what are the things that happens inside the human body.
Yeah.
And that eventually tied to, I guess, the sense that especially as social media continues to advance and everything becomes about the meme, it becomes about whatever goes viral at the moment, we've become really desensitized towards the idea of violence. We have started associating the idea of gunshots or knife wounds to a brief and then the person falls down dramatically in a pool of blood, and no one thinks about all of the other situations that arise if one gets stabbed or has a bone broken or gets shot with a shotgun and things like that. And I don't think it's anyone's fault. I don't actually think it's the public's fault. It's just we getting steamrolled with pretty depictions of violence left, right, and center, that when we see it in the news, we kind of shrug because we are conditioned to think, oh, it sucks that someone died, but it's not that bad, is it? And I think I felt this weird obligation to make use of all my medical knowledge, my very comprehensible, worrying knowledge of corpses and the insides of the human body, to remind people that, yeah, it is that bad. I want to write the kind of violence and the kind of gore that digs into someone's psyche and stays there. And the next time they see mention of anything resembling it in the news, I want them to flinch. I want them to spend a moment thinking, oh God, I know exactly what just fucking happened here. And I want them to remember, I don't want people to take violence so casually, because it is not a thing to take casually whatsoever. And also, I have a lot of night terrors, and the only way I've discovered that I can fix any of this is put them all on paper and share them with other people, like a terrible, terrible curse. So I've gotten very good at dealing with that.
So buy Cassandra's book so you can be cursed with the rest of us. That's a hell of a marketing scheme. I love that. Mona, in what Cassandra does with violence, you do with the weird, the hyper real, the it's awesome to really love a book and feel like you wouldn't really trust anyone if you met them outside the book.
Yeah.
Like, I know you have a thing for unreliable narrators and all of this.
Yeah.
So you did that with the weirdness, with the surreal, with all of that, but none of it is sort of bizarro literature where like people walk around and they have sausages for fingers. It's all within a universe that you've contained, and that at all points in time you seem very in control of. So can you talk a little bit about the weirdness in both books, actually, if you want?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, the portal into the surreal is digging into a consciousness as realistically as possible, and with great specificity. And that's how I get myself to the surreal, because if I'm really inhabiting a consciousness, I just think about my own experience of consciousness. I'm always daydreaming. I'm always nightmares are always playing out in my head of potential scenarios, you know. So, I mean, if I stay in someone's head, I'm gonna get to the weird super fucking fast. So I think in some ways it's just about a commitment to my idea of what realism is, that I get there, you know?
It's not
Um,
weird, it's your reality.
yeah, that's right. Well, no, it did. I think, and I think that's kind of why I love horror, is because horror invites the surreal that way. There's always that tension in horror that I love about whether something is actually happening in reality as we know it, or if it's just happening because we're in this character's head, and they're disturbed or compromised in some way. And so their experience of the world is what we are reading. I love that ambiguity that horror leans into. And then the best horror to me never quite lands in either place. Because I think that's actually the truth of our experience in the world. We're always wondering, is it me or is it the world? What the fuck just happened, you know? And so it's actually like a very realistic thing that we go through every day. But yeah, I mean, we're all weird in our heads. And I just like bringing that onto the page.
I think most of us are also weird outside of our heads.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely we are. Yeah.
Thank you. Kate, this is a debut, but it doesn't sound like a debut. And then you apparently did everything in your power to complicate the writing process. Complex characters, lots of feeling, changing nature of the novel, lots of secrets, dual timelines. How did you say, oh, writing a book is so easy. Let me just make sure that I can uber complicate things for myself in this debut. Tell us about writing the book.
Oh, it was a nightmare. It was a huge nightmare. Yeah, it just took many, many, many drafts. Like Mona was just saying, I love the idea of people asking themselves, wait a second, what just happened? Did that really happen? Have I misinterpreted something? And so yeah, I found myself trying to sort of tell a story where you can read it in different ways depending on your perspective. And again, going to that idea of revisiting one story with lots of perspectives. I love that, because I think one of the amazing things about uh, being alive is that we're all different things all the time. We're many things, we're different things to different people, and maybe we'll just never quite understand everything about ourselves or other people, and it's a beautiful challenge of being alive that we just face all the time. And so yeah, I was trying to write a story that could be read in different ways, and obviously the pieces have to fit together all the way along. And yeah, I have no answer to it. I just took ages over it and did lots and lots of drafts. But I think there's I think, yeah, with each perspective you inhabit, you just have to be very convinced of each character's motivations, and understanding in this version, this is how they're coming at it, and this is how they would react, and this is how they would behave, and I just had to keep reminding myself of that all the way through. But yes, I have got no answers, no good answers on the craft side whatsoever, I'm afraid.
Which might just be the best answer. Like I don't know. I did
Don't
it.
know.
It was, I cried. I punched the wall. And
Yeah, yeah,
no.
many times, many times.
So I promised I was going to be done with the name calling and stuff. So you can just jump in however you want. Um, it's funny because you're reading three novels for a panel. And or in the case of Cassandra, I reviewed it. So I read it months ago. and you're trying to look for those things that are, you know, they bring all of that work together. And in the case of these three books, they're not even the same genre. It's it's not the same voice, not the same story. The only thing that brings them together is, for our comfort and marketing purposes, we can say dark academia. The one thing that you kind of find in all of them, that connective tissue, one of those that becomes very obvious early on is, rivalry. There's a lot of rivalry in academia. I was wondering if each one of you could tell us a little bit about putting rivalry in the book and how you see rivalry, because you're authors, so we're supposed to also compete with ourselves, compete with each other, but we build communities. Academia is the same way. Talk to me about rivalry in each one of your books. Or I can do the Mona. There you go. See?
Yeah, well, it's a huge part of Bunny. I mean, it's huge. You know, the bunnies are super competitive with each other. And in We Love You, Bunny, each one is trying to make a claim of authorship. Each one is trying to claim that they are the ones that are responsible for the magic that happens, this transformation of bunny to man. That's like what they did, you know, they're responsible. And I love that because I feel like that there's something very real about that. There's such anxiety, I think, that especially young creators, but I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience, but also my experience just teaching and seeing what happens in a workshop. You know, there is a lot of anxiety around like, it's my idea. I have this idea. It's mine. This is how I came to it. I'm hanging on to it. I'm not telling you about it. This is mine. You know, and and like, you know, I really, really wanted to play with that in this book, you know, and have fun with how far it can go. I mean, these girls are all friends, but there are so many intimations that they take pleasure in each other's failures, and they take pleasure in each other's moments of profound insecurity. And I can't deny that I've witnessed that as a writer in the world, that I've seen that. There's a lot of Schadenfreude that happens, I'm afraid to say. And at all ages and all levels, there's that Schadenfreude that happens. But the reality is, nobody is going to understand what you go through as a writer like another writer. And so you need your community of people, and you just have to move through your stuff. And ultimately, I think, learn that yes, you are truly just, you're on a track with yourself and nobody is you. And so like getting as close to that as possible and trying to let the other stuff go away is the ultimate thing. It's what I tell my students. It's what I tell myself. But the reality in the world and on social media is that we're not perfect. And yeah, sometimes we fall prey to these petty feelings and they take us to very dark places. Yeah.
If you can't afford therapy, look at this. Go read this. It might help.
That's right.
or not. Like, we don't take responsibility for whatever this does to your brain.
Oh, I was going to jump in actually and say, like, it is so fascinating that rivalry exists everywhere. And I think it's made worse by social media and by marketing. I blame marketing for just about everything. And I think over like the history of human civilization, we've cultivated a sense of rivalry because you cannot sell things if people are not unhappy with who they are, how they look like, and their progress in life at the moment. And the irony of that all is, like, once again, like Mona said, like, the only person we are ultimately competing with is ourselves at the end of the day. We cannot steal anyone else's voices. We cannot steal any other person's looks, works, or approaches to the world. We are just, the only thing we can do is see if we can be better than who we were yesterday. That's all we can manage.
Yeah.
And so much of art really is the result, I think, of the opposite of rivalry, because when we drop those pretenses of ego, it's when we are willing to pull from the world around us and when we are willing to put things down and offer it to the generations that come. And I think, like, as I get into midlife, I've been thinking about that a lot, like the continuity of the species in general, the whole idea of a mimetic existence. We are at the end of the day really finite mortal beings. And if you look at the lifespan of eternity, we are just a blink. We're less than a blink. nonetheless, we create art, and we create art based on every single thing that we've seen before and every piece of art that has come before. And if we try to be the only thing that ever mattered to our species, none of this would exist. We exist because everything that is and was and will be. And it's just kind of interesting how that like is the inverse of what we're told by marketing all the time. I have big complicated thoughts about this. I'll stop now.
I'll do this instead. Since we're talking marketing, I'm not going to say this is a happy-go-lucky book, but I became an inch taller and more intelligent by reading it. So as after marketing, um, uh, yeah, I don't know. Thank you, Cassandra. Kate, rivalry. You also have a fair share of rivalry in that novel.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't know if I even thought of it in those terms at first, because you know you have these two characters, the narrator who's from this quite humble background, and Bryn who's from quite a privileged background and seems to have everything, and the power imbalance is so vast, and much of the story is almost the narrator sort of trying to climb to Bryn's level in his mind. He's sort of trying to reach this point. He's under no illusions that he's not really a match for Bryn, even though that's all he wants to be. He sort of wants to be with him all the time, and he just sort of wants to inhabit his life. But there's a very clear sense that he knows that this is not a fair contest. That it's not a sort of real even contest. And so it's funny in some ways. I don't think about them as rivals in that way. But he's certainly trying to uh, he's trying to meet Bryn where he is and sort of usurp him in certain ways. And I think I would just wholeheartedly agree with what everyone's already said about rivalry in the kind of wider writing community, and even in outside of fiction. You know, when I started out in copywriting, I can remember feeling like I had to try and be the best sort of writer in the room, and I had to show that I was really good. And actually, the best stuff happened when, you know, you'd speak to a designer about some of your work, and they'd have a completely lateral perspective on it, and they'd say something that made you go, "Oh, of course, that's what I'm really trying to say. Well, that's what this should really be about." And they would unlock something, you know, someone with a completely different viewpoint and maybe a very different skill set, and actually all of a sudden things are much more interesting when
Yeah.
when you don't try and hold on to them so tightly. So yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that.
No. A very quick one. Libraries are under attack, and yet dark academia celebrates library. Every dark academia novel that I've read so far features at least one library. Um, which leads me to think about research. There's a difference between I have a degree and then another degree, and then I got a PhD because I wanted to torture myself. So folks that go through the academia process, you emerge completely changed, different. I think if you're not a little bit more cynical, you probably didn't really study all that much. So when it comes to creating these worlds and the stuff that you put in it, obviously there's a lot that just comes from your head. There might be a percentage that comes from research. So what's the research like when you're writing dark, wonderful, weird, very freeing academia novel where you can do literally all of you do exactly what you want with it? Is there any sort of research involved, and how does that look like?
I love reading up about architecture. I love reading about all the small little details about furniture and how libraries and buildings are set up and put down. So I deep dived into that rabbit hole, and the novel gave me an excuse to start trolling through a lot of universities and like hospitals like video backlogs where they will have live autopsies, so to speak, for you to study in great detail. There, if you look around online, you can find very, 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 very many ways to see it how various organs are dissected, and it is my comfort watch. I say admitting it publicly. I was not. Perhaps that's a worrying thing to say.
I mean, I look around. We're
I think
there's
you're safe.
just outside the doors. It's like it's fine. Go watch some organs being sliced. It's all good. Kate, I felt like we were gonna go real dark suddenly.
I broke it out there.
Let's keep the horror fictitious. Kate, yes.
I was just thinking about the research. So obviously I listen to a lot of music. There's a lot of music in the book. Music sort of being linked to kind of memory and taking you back to a certain time. But I thought one thing I did do, obviously there's a big central question in the book around, you know, who is Bryn? What is he capable of? What is this charm of his? And so I quite deliberately, when it came to the pick a card type magic that I would have to describe, I watched loads of YouTube videos of magic tricks, and actually he does a magic trick very early on in the book, which is a real magic trick that you can learn how to perform. It's sort of about having a card pop out of the deck, sort of haunted card deck. But when it came to the occult stuff, I left that much more general, and I tried not to be specific about that because this is the element that there is the question, and I didn't want to be too direct about whether this is, you know, literally taken from a book of occult magic, or whether this is just a young man who sort of likes to scare people and dabble in things. So on the pick a card magic, I did do a lot of research about how you do the tricks, and I tried to make those real. But on the other side, I kind of left it a bit more open.
Awesome. Many years ago, I had a thing called Show Me Your Shelves, where I'd like to ask some of my favorite writers anything that you would like to recommend, an album, recent movie that you saw, a list of books. I'm not going to do that thing. Recommend us one book. Recommend me 20 if you want. Cassandra, do you want to go first and let us know if you have any recs that, I mean, it's Sunday. We still have hours to waste.
Buy Silk Song. Silk Song is absolutely excellent. I've been obsessed with that, and I've also been like obsessed with this small indie game called Look Outside. Very, very excellent cosmic horror, really cute pixel art. It's essentially about this guy who wakes up one day and hears like things are going very poorly outside. And if you like look outside, his body gets dragged out by the eye sockets. So he has to kind of like wander through the apartment to figure out what is going on. And it's the most weirdly wholesome cosmic horror game you will ever encounter. Like half the time you can be like, oh yeah, you can stay in my apartment with all the rest of my friends while everything's weird outside. Yeah, you can eat my food. It's fine. You can make potlucks for people, which is incredibly funny. And there is this one moment where you can find a little rat baby and you get trapped in the room and you have to choose to either feed the rat baby to this horrible maw in the wall or give it your arm. And if you give it your arm, you get to raise this little guy and take care of him, pet his head, and teach him how to be a human being. And it's really sweet while also be having some of the worst gore I've seen in a while. Like, oh my God, the death scenes made me flinch. And I don't really flinch at death scenes.
But you can't, how do you hold it and pet it if it cost you an arm?
Rub your chin over it. Come on. We've all done that to an animal. What you talking about?
I felt like this was a game that you helped write, but then you said wholesome, and I was like, oh no, Cassandra was not involved.
You know me too well, my friend.
Mona, what are you listening to, watching, reading? What do you recommend?
I recommend. Kate Bush kind of saved me in writing this book. She was like my spirit guide, my North Star. So I recommend The Hounds of Love because I think it is one of the greatest albums ever. 1985, Kate Bush, whole thing. Just listen to it. You won't be sorry. That's what I recommend. I always recommend Drag Race because I think it's amazing. And I love that play between reality and fantasy that the show engages in and how one informs the other in performance. So I recommend that. What?
The colors.
Oh, the colors. Yeah.
The
Changed the color of my
yeah.
dreams. It did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So always recommend Drag Race. Yeah.
Kate, what do you recommend?
I feel like I'm really, really late to the party with this because I've only just seen the movie Bring Her Back.
Right.
I
And
love that.
Yeah. And it was quite a ride. So if anyone hasn't already seen it, then strap in.
All right. Well, my recommendations are very obvious. They're all these three books. If you are here, you can go to the chat right now. It says thank you for attending, and there's a wonderful link right there where you can click through and purchase some of these books. I highly encourage all of you to go read them. Kate, Mona, Cassandra, I want to thank you so much for your work, for your energy, for your words, for your sense of humor, and for being here. I would also like to thank the Brooklyn Book Festival for bringing us all together. And now let me read the whole thing that I had because I'm a professional. Oh, look, I already did part of this. Thank you, Mona, Cassandra, and Kate. Everyone, please remember you can order books through the link in the chat, and please consider making a donation to the Brooklyn Book Festival. If you buy stuff on Amazon, I fully expect you to go donate some money to the Brooklyn Book Festival right now, which is celebrating its 20th years of presenting free literary programming. Plus, today kicks off 9 days of Brooklyn Book Festival events, including citywide bookend events, the festival's in-person Children's Day and Festival Day that take place on September 20th and 21st in downtown Brooklyn. I was there a year or 2 years ago. It was absolutely fantastic, lovely people, lovely event, and it is all free to attend. Once again, go purchase some books, and thank you. Please give a jazz hands to all of our amazing authors. Thank you for being here. Have a good day.